Hello, my loves. Welcome to Love, Sex, and Magic. I'm your host, Melissa Wells. Today's episode is, so good. I have been looking forward to interviewing this guest for so long. I've been a huge fan of his videos, of his work, especially in 2020. They have just brought light to so much of the craziness and the confusion that has been going on in the world. So today's guest is the king of conscious comedy, the one and only JP Sears, also known as Awaken with JP, which his videos have reached hundreds of millions of people all over the world, where he has made light and poked fun of, personal development, spirituality, the spiritual scene. But more recently, he has been making videos about everything that's been going on in the world, which have been absolutely incredible. I have shared the shit out of them. You've probably seen me sharing them. I just think what he's done this year has just been amazing. So I'm really excited to sit down with him. And we talk in this conversation. We talked all about what's going on in the world, like what his real opinions and beliefs are. We talk about his spiritual beliefs, his journey in the personal development and coaching space, and how he decided to bring his comedic talents into it. We talked all about, how we can navigate the fear in the world, all of everything that's going on with the pandemic. We're recording this in October 2020. So lots has happened this year. And we talk about all of it. We also talk about censorship, because his videos have been very highly censored for sharing the things that he has been sharing. So without further ado, JP, thank you so much for joining me today on the show.
You're welcome, Mel. Thank you for having me, sister.
Yeah, so I want to just start by just saying thank you for your incredible work and for giving myself and just millions and millions of people around the world hours and hours of laughter, especially this year, while we've all just been wrestling with so much uncertainty and just trying to make sense of the world. I feel like we've really needed it.
Yeah,
So,
well, thank you. I appreciate you being weird enough to laugh with me. It warms my heart knowing it could bring some level of light into your life.
Oh yeah, no, totally. And I know that so many of our listeners will be so familiar with your work and be, sharing the same gratitude right now. So yeah, let's dive in. I've got so many questions that I want to ask you today. There's so much that I want to cover. So the first thing that I want to talk to you about is you really you have such a great way of blending personal development, spirituality, coaching with comedy. So I know that you are very spiritual guy. I know that you're very in the work, doing the work, but you're also just so good at poking fun at all of it. So I'm really interested, what came first for you? Were you a coach who got into comedy? Were you a comedian who got into personal development? How did that work? And how did you find that, how did that gift come through of okay, I'm going to merge these two worlds?
Yeah, well, I appreciate you asking. The coaching came first. So, I'll sound cliche here, but screw it. I started my spiritual path when I was 18, 19 years old. And very shortly after that, I started coaching people while being immersed in my own self-work. So I ran what became a life coaching business for about 13 years, where I was primarily doing emotional healing coaching with people, which for me, emotions are a powerful gateway into our spiritual life. Carl Jung has said our feelings are the language of our soul. So working on those, helping people help themselves to heal their stuck emotions, traumas, was such a joy. But during that time, I was telling myself it would be bad for business and discredit me as a coach and as a spiritual guy if I allowed myself to be funny. In my personal life, ever since I was a kid, my sense of humor was very rampant. But as a coach, I thought, well, I'm supposed to only be serious. So I did that for about 13 years. And then it was October 5th, 2014, I released my first comedy video. But leading up to that, I kept having these ideas come to me to share my perspectives through the language of comedy. And of course, I was like, looking back, I could realize I was discounting the creative muse, which is kind
Yeah.
of like discounting my higher self. Just no, like that's not meeting my egoic ideas of who I'm supposed to be and how I get validation from people. So all, not necessarily the best thinking, but it was my thinking. But the ideas kept coming, and I'd liken it to perhaps a mother who's in labor giving birth. The baby's going to come whether you want it to or not. So there were like these, I would call it creative contractions from the muse, where the idea, I just had to give birth to it. So that was my first video called How to Be Ultra Spiritual. And funny thing happened after that video. It turned out it was like a really good thing for my business, where
Yeah.
a lot of more people kept finding me. And it was also the first time I felt any degree of real creative satisfaction. I didn't even know what that was, but I felt that it was so fulfilling. So I just kept making videos with no plan of it becoming anything big, and not even a plan that, hey, I'll keep making videos on an ongoing basis. I just thought, well, I made that video. Here's one other idea. So let me take that step. So I just started Forrest Gumping my way through with no plan. And that's what I'm still doing. Yeah, I do my
Wow.
best to say yes to my heart, yes to the ideas when they just drop into me. And the more I do that, the less I become who I think I'm supposed to be, and the more I become what I'm supposed to be, and
Mm,
who I actually am, rather than what
mm.
I think I am and what I think I'm supposed to be. And I think for me, and I think all of us, when we do that, that correlates to contributing to the world in a better way than if we weren't.
Oh, I love that. I think you're such a good. It's such a good example of someone that's really found their purpose, and it's such a unique blend, such a gift. So absolutely love that story. I think definitely in the coaching space, it can become like, doing the work, doing the inner work. It can become a bit serious, and we have to remind ourselves not to take it too seriously.
Yeah.
So I think that would be my next question. Then, do you have any advice for coaches listening, or myself and my partner, both coaches? How can we bring more lightness to heavy subjects? And maybe, for people listening that aren't coaches, but are just doing the work on themselves, and they're digging into their traumas and their wounds and their stuff. Like,
Yeah.
how can we bring like humor and lightness to it in a respectful way? Because I think you do such a great job of this.
Yeah, and I especially love that you said in a respectful way. So to me, I would always encourage people to use humor with themselves in a compassionate, respectful, loving way, where we make light of things because we love them, or we're making light of things in order to pierce through the fear around them,
Mm,
rather than using humor in a way of shaming ourselves or shaming other people. Because you can be a bully towards yourself or someone else with humor, get laughs, but
mm,
we're breaking things down, not building ourselves up. So, I like to remind myself and other people, when we're getting serious, that God gave us a butthole for a reason. And I think it's to remind us that we're all full of shit. And I mean, I don't mean that in a shameful way. I mean that in a humbling way. We all have an ego, and we think that what we think is true, and we think that what we think is true is all the truth out there. So when we look at our beliefs and our practices that we hold most dearly, we can hold those with reference, yet at the same time remind ourselves, I'm full of crap too. So if I can learn to laugh at what I take most seriously, it's also good. And and I think part of how we do that with respect is we're not laughing all the time. If we do that, we actually have a mental disorder. But if we don't laugh anytime, we kind of have a mental disorder in the opposite direction. So there's times where, of course, what's appropriate is for us to be super sincere, vulnerable, and there's a time for tears. And there's also a time for laughs and making light of the things that we cry about and that we take seriously. So a little practice I love to give people is do your best to laugh at what you take most seriously. Can you find the holes in how you relate to it? Can you find the egoism in how you relate to it? And if you can't, it means your ego is probably dominating how you relate to it, because the unseen ego stays in control more than the seen ego. It takes a lot of humbleness to see our ego involved in our spiritual practice, involved in our self growth, and involved in our healing. But if we don't see it, then our ego can start to use all our practices as tools to gratify itself while we do the work. Yet, I think we can also free ourselves from our ego to a greater degree when we have the humbleness to see, hey, here's some ego involved in it. The last thing I'll mention on that is, I used to suffer from seriousness. It's a, it's a harsh condition, but it makes us feel safe. The more serious we are. So I took my spiritual practice only seriously. I took my healing only seriously. Yet what I realized, at least from my delusional point of view, I don't know that it's true. I just know I think it's true. Yeah, my realization is seriousness is a fear-based psychological posture. And I don't think being afraid, being in fear, and coming from that place of constriction, I don't think the fear helps us expand and grow. So, when we're being serious, what if we learn to look at that and say, oh, in that moment I'm being serious, I'm actually being controlled by my own fear. Doesn't make it a bad thing, but probably makes it a thing that we want to grow beyond.
Oh yeah, I love that. Love that answer. And I really like as well that you said it's about, finding light or making fun of how we relate to something. It's not like making fun of trauma or making fun of, these things, but it's how we relate to it. Like finding that's
100%. And I'll give you an example. When I was a ego maniac and didn't know it, and notice I'm using this in past tense, so now I can pretend like I'm above my ego. So when I was an egomaniac, like I'd look at my meditation practice and like I would ask people like, oh, how long do you meditate? Oh, 20 minutes a day. Cool. I do 45, just so you know. And like that's a very egoic way. And I'd look at other people who, you're still involved in the religion you grew up in. You don't think for yourself. Luckily I do. And of course I'd look at other people's beliefs and compare myself to them in very subtle ways and always posture myself so I'm above them, at least in my own mind. And that was me being an egomaniac with my spiritual practice. And it was hard for me to see because it's like, no, this is my spiritual territory. There's no ego here because it's spiritual. There's only noble things. But, and I doubt I'm the only one in the world, but I was using those noble things as hiding places to position my ego behind so my ego could be egotistical without me recognizing it as egotistical. Because in the spiritual world, for me, I was finding the less ego I had, the more egotistically I was gratified. So I would play that hallucination on myself.
So true. So true. It's like way easier to hide it or to not see it.
Absolutely.
So good. Great. I mean, I want to use this as a kind of bridge to move into more serious things that have obviously happened this year, because I already loved your videos, but then this year I really felt you change up your content. I felt you received this call to change up your content to really reflect some of the things that were going on in the world and people's confusion and people's fear. And I just have to say, like, absolutely so much respect for how you did that and the line that you have been treading with that. I have shared your videos from this year with every single member of my family and have really found them to be such a great bridge and vehicle to help people question their own way of seeing things without kind of like being like, hey, did you know this? And hey, go to the CDC website, or hey, did you know, like, look at this document. It's like, hey, watch this video. And it really helps people to kind of sit with something in a different way. So really have appreciated that. And I'd love to hear, like, was there like a moment where you decided, you saw everything going down this year and you decided, okay, I'm going to use my gifts and use my platform to actually create something that is going to influence and impact people around COVID-19?
Yeah. Well, first, I so appreciate you seeing and recognizing I'd call it a transformation I've gone through. Therefore, my content, my videos have gone through. Um, and that's from my perspective, there has been a major transformation, and I don't know that I chose it, yet the call that I've been receiving from wherever the call comes from, it's led me in the direction. And for me, the overarching principle of my call is to help free people from fear, specifically unnecessary fear. We all have fear that serves us at times, but when we're indoctrinated by fear or carrying fears that no longer serve us in the moment, there's no greater burglary of the quality of one's life than carrying around unnecessary fear 24/7. It literally robs us of our freedom. And I think freedom is synonymous with the human spirit. We need freedom. So from my point of view, and I'll just skip the politically correct pleasantries, there is the detrimental virus out there that I see is fear. And it just seems to be propagated by the mainstream media, corporations, some of the governments, and it just, the level of fear we're told to be under, it stopped matching the reality of the COVID-19 situation. And I when I'm accidentally thinking for myself, I see there's a very mismatched reality. And I think it was sometime in April when numbers from studies from the University of Southern California started coming out showing infection rates were way higher than we thought, but showed like therefore mortality rates and like actual horrible sickness rates, those are way, way lower than we thought. So turns out like the death rates were 22.5 to 45 times less than we thought. Great news. But we were just kept being told to lock down, be afraid. And I love people. And when I see people and am one of those people at the same time, having our freedom taken from us when we consent to the fear, we take our freedom ourselves, but we do it because we consent to the temptation of fear that comes from a source that maybe isn't in our best interest. I get pissed. I want to help people free themselves from the fear that doesn't serve them. So when I see something corrupt happening, a source of fear, a source of control, I've been doing my best to call that out in the videos. And there's been so many damn angles of it. The content, unfortunately, is writing itself. I look forward to the day, I'd love it if it's in the near future, but I look forward to the day when I don't know what to make videos about. But right now, there's just, things flooding, whether it's, the CDC comes out with new information, but it's super suppressed, or our friend Fauci tells us, hey, the second wave coming, we got to be more afraid and, wear your mask. And we're like, what the hell does this mean?
Mm.
Stay in your homes. The sunlight kills the virus, so stay inside. Obesity is a high risk factor, so we're going to keep all the gyms closed. And we're like, well, I don't know if this makes any sense.
Yeah.
So
they've given you a lot of content, a lot of they've made it maybe easier for you.
yeah, I don't want to tell anybody what to think. I would love for people to make up their own minds. And most of the time when people are under intense fear, they're not thinking for themselves. Humans are very easily hypnotized when they're afraid. Then whatever you tell them after the acute fear, it goes into their mind, and the mind grasps it because it's in a state of fear. And anytime we're afraid, we go into a fetal position. So our mind does the same thing. We contract around whatever surrounds the fear. Just like an abuse victim, it's being abused is very scary. So they contract around whatever's happening during the abuse. And that's oftentimes why they will keep secrets and allow the abuse to perpetuate, because they've latched on to the suggestions, like I'm worth being abused. That's like the belief at the time they're hypnotized to it. So humanity has been abused here. And there's so much fear to wake up from. So I'm doing my best to help people wake up from the fear. Therefore, they'll be able to think for themselves more clearly rather than just being the carrier of someone else's thought, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I love that you shared as well. You're not saying that you think COVID-19 is a hoax or not a real issue. Obviously, you know that it is, but it's the level of fear that's being perpetuated by mainstream media and governments and various other bodies does not match the actual factual statistics.
Indeed, I think COVID-19 is real, and it seems as though it's got a mortality rate on par with a relatively heavy flu season, but not much greater than that. And, as soon as we're born, we're at risk of dying. So we can then live our lives in a way where we act like the purpose of our life is to preserve our life, which means we'll never have freedom, we'll never take risk. Or we can live our life knowing, hey, there's risks involved. And I'm someone who's willing to live my life. And, you look at human history and we realize when people have their freedom taken away, eventually they become willing to risk their life in the name of regaining their freedom. So with it's kind of like we all know, hey, driving in a car is a risk. And we know statistically there's tens of thousands of car accident deaths each year, if not more. Yet we're not scared to drive in a car. We know there's risks. We know our life will be a little bit more prison-like if we don't take the risk of hopefully driving mindfully. So yeah, I think COVID-19 is something to be aware of, especially if you're in a high-risk population or have comorbidities. I don't think it's a hoax. I think the fear around it is a manipulation, though.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I'm on the exact same page. And in one of the very first videos of yours from the year's events, I remember I watched it so many times because I shared it with so many people and rewatched it because it was the first thing that I'd seen that kind of made me feel less crazy, because I was kind of saying all this stuff to people around me. And then when I had that first video, which was what it's like to believe everything the media tells you, or something. I think that was the first one. That was the first one that I watched anyway, and I was just like, literally, thank God someone is saying this in a way that I can share it. And one of the lines that I remember from it was, "The more afraid I am, the more obedient I am," and I was like, that just sums it all up. Like, can you talk a little bit more into that? Like, why is it? Is that what's happening? Is it like we are being controlled? We are being put into this state of fear so that we are more easily to manipulate?
Well, uh, my opinion, I wish my opinion wasn't my opinion. Yet looking at all the information I've seen, my opinion is that we are being controlled in a way that is not in our best interest. And the single best source I've seen for very reputable information and reputable experts sharing their perspective of what's going on, who's controlling us, and why. It's a documentary. I'm sure you've seen it. It's called Indoctrination. It's the second film in the Pandemic series. And anybody can go to pandemicseries.com and watch it. It's called
Yeah.
Indoctrination.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Definitely watch that. It's so packed full of research and findings and different doctors and scientists and virologists. I won't put the link in the show notes because it will probably stop this podcast episode from going where it needs to go.
Yeah.
We'll talk about censorship later.
So, I'll share with you and like why the control. Just in brief, a short thought on that. I was having a conversation with Mickey Willis, the man who made the film, and I said, okay, well, it doesn't make sense. Like, why would the powers that be they Bill Gates, China, other powers, why would they want to control us? Why would they feel gratified in getting us to be obedient and wearing masks everywhere and moving toward tracking apps and staying in our homes and doing as we're told? And first, we can look at other countries where that's already the norm. So there's unfortunately a precedent set that tells us part of the shadow of human nature is a gratification in controlling other humans. So nonetheless, when I asked him that, I said, why would they care about controlling people? He shared with me there's a couple currencies that fuel the ego. And this is me paraphrasing it. Obviously, we know there's money-hungry people where they'll recklessly destroy lives, destroy the planet in order to make money. But there's another currency outside of money, and it's the currency of control. Both control and money feed into a sense of power that the ego wants to have. And in fact, I would even say that the desire for money at the expense of other people is only a symptom of the desire for control, because money just gives you more control. If you didn't want control, you probably wouldn't compromise other people in order to get absurd amounts of money. So I think when people are rooted in controlled by, call it the shadow of human nature, control becomes how they're trying to fulfill their lives. And unfortunately, the more control, no matter how much control we get, as you and I both know, it doesn't fulfill us. I think we know fulfillment likely can only happen when we're in love, sharing the love, dedicated to a purpose, contributing to the greater good of humanity, contributing to the greater good of ourselves. That's the sources of fulfillment. But if we try to get fulfillment from areas where fulfillment's not, then we develop a ferocious appetite for that area, and we consume. Okay, we're controlling the whole country. Cool, that's not enough. Now the world, lockdown Australia. Mm-hmm. It is so you see dictatorial tendencies just running out of control, and it seems as though we have that. And I would also add, from my delusional point of view, a human can only be controlled when they're in fear. There's an excellent interview on London Rose where they shared, if as individuals we root ourselves in love and act from love, not fear, make our decisions from love, not fear, we are not controllable. But we're
Yeah.
only controlled when we're afraid. And part of that fear is we're indoctrinated into the fear of what they tell us. This is super deadly. It's going to kill you and your family, and you're going to infect other people and kill them. And or you fear the consequences of not being as obedient as they say. So when I look at this is the biggest problem I've seen in the world in my lifetime. At times I get overwhelmed. Like, what the hell can I do? I mean, I'm doing my best with, reaching, I'm grateful, millions of people with the videos to hopefully urge people in a awoken awareness direction. But really, like, this is a big problem. What can I do? And I don't think the problem is going to be solved by only thinking globally. I think we have to act locally, and as individuals, notice when we're in fear and step into another part of us and be in our loving self, and let our decisions and actions come from that love rather than letting our actions come from fear. That, I think, is the most powerful thing we can do. I think there's great merit in acting globally, yet there is no merit in acting globally without acting locally in tandem, because in my opinion, we have to take the power of Gandhi's statement, which is, be the change you wish to see in the world. We got to be it first. We got to be in love, not in fear.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree that quote from Gandhi has literally been the theme of this whole year. I believe, it's up to all of us to be the change that we want to see. And fear is what divides us, and it seems as though division has been another theme of this year, which again has seemingly just been another way to keep us in fear, to keep us under this control. And I also just want to shout out to you shared you started talking about London Real, Brian Rose, and I think I know which interview you're referring to, but just everyone definitely check out londonreal.tv for all of Brian Rose's epic interviews that he's done this year as well, if you're interested in learning more about this. So I think, like, when we hear like people talking about like there are dark forces at play, and there's like this kind of these bad guys that are like out to get us, that we hear this kind of like, oh, it's this good bad narrative, and why would these people at the top not be the good guys? I think that's been like an illusion that's been shattered for a lot of people this year, that maybe the people that have the most influence on our lives actually are not necessarily acting from love or in their hearts or living their purpose or really devoted to a life of service as maybe we feel that they could be or should be, which I feel has been a really, really, life-changing, earth-shattering realization for a lot of us this year, as more revelations have come out. But I think, exactly as you shared, it's like we can act from the heart, or we can act from this ego, this desire to control, to have more. And as we know, that gets us, it doesn't get us fulfillment, it doesn't get us where we truly want to be, but it is this never-ending pursuit. And so it's really no surprise that like huge systems and industries and groups are formed of people just continuing to act from the ego and from this desire for power and desire for money and desire for control, and maybe haven't had any kind of spiritual intervention along the way, where they have decided, actually, like, what do I like, where can I act from love, where can I really be in my heart? And I think, if that is all you've known in your life, then it's, you can kind of understand, well, it's, how do we have that intervention for some of these industries? It feels like, well, it's just kind of like we can't really infiltrate that system and completely change it. We have to really start creating another one, which I think comes back around to being the change that you want to see.
Yeah, I think you're right, and you said so many beautiful things there, and I'll share a couple of thoughts that come up. You mentioned this has been a hell of a wake up call this year, and where it's very hard to still believe that many of the powers that be have our best interest in mind and are coming from a purely good place. And that's a painful wake up call. And I think also many are simply driven deeper into denial because the wake up call is painful. And it's kind of like on the Matrix, like, okay, give me the blue pill. I want to go back to sleep. But also, we can look at it practically. If we realize if our protectors have been betraying us, there's a human instinct, a self-preservation instinct that comes out, and we see it in abuse victims, where the victim will protect the perpetrator. It becomes Stockholm syndrome, where first off, the victim protects the perpetrator in their own mind. They rationalize how that's a good person. He touches me at night, but he really loves me, and there's nothing wrong because like that's dad, and like dad protects me. Yeah. It is so freaking scary to realize our protector is the perpetrator of ourselves, because then we don't know how to make sense of our world for a while. That's why abuse victims will protect the perpetrator, both rationalizing it in their own mind and then keeping secrets. Sometimes they protect the perpetrator by not even remembering the abuse. Yeah. So there's that is triggered in humanity right now as well, where many people want, without knowing they want to protect the perpetrator. They want to rationalize why these mandates taking away our rights, why that's a good thing. Yeah, you're taking my rights, but it's in my best interest. They're protecting me.
It's because they love me. It's because they want me to be safe.
Yeah. And it's pretty damn scary to let that go. Yet, unless we let that go, we'll always be the abuse victim. And I think we all deserve better than that. And in changing the system, you said something that kind of makes me think, like, man, changing, quite honestly, what it has and is a very corrupt system with a lot of corrupt people. I don't know if the change really comes from within the system, because if the system's designed to be corrupt, then how are you going to uncorrupt a system that's designed to be corrupt? And I think part of how the system, and I'm speaking so generally here, but I think how the system perpetuates its corruption is by getting people to believe that we create the change within the system. Well, it just feeds the system more. But yeah, what if all our political problems are not solved through politics? What if they're solved outside the system? What if they're first solved, as we've mentioned, within our own lives on a moment-to-moment basis, when we either are or are not being the change we wish to see in the world? And what if we realize all of our relationships with our neighbors, our friends, our family, how we treat people, what if we realize that is influential on changing? Because it sounds sort of utopian here, but if we increase the amount of love and kindness that we hold in our lives, then something that is not that vibration, it just won't be able to survive, according to my delusional point of view.
I'm here for it. And, where are we showing up in a way that is, corrupt and control hungry and power hungry? Where are we not in our hearts? Because, it is all about starting from within. And yes, we can go they, and we kind of know who they represents when we say that. But it's also like us, like, let's start. Like, how can we make the changes in our world that really put us on a path where we're showing up and leading ourselves? If we can't trust our leaders, if we don't feel our leaders have our best interests at heart, then how are we leading ourselves? What are we going to create with this new world? And we are here. We're the ones responsible right now for the planet that we're leaving behind to the next generation. So I really feel that it's up to us to, be the change in our own lives, with our families, and just, with, for you and I, we are, have got these platforms and these audiences. But for anyone listening, if you've got, a friendship group, if you've got 10 people that like your stuff on Instagram, then you're a leader as well. You're an influencer. You can be the change as well. So I think we all count in all of this.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Indeed. I don't know who the hell it was. It might have been Plato or someone like significantly smarter than me, but they had a quote that was, whoever controls the narrative controls society. And there's a tremendous attempts to control the narrative right now. And part of that is heavily censoring a lot that is being spoken that is not in alignment with the mainstream narrative. I've had a lot of things censored, videos being taken down, posts censored, as have countless other people. Doctors on YouTube have been censored for sharing their medical point of view. And the real problem is self-censorship. When we don't speak our mind because we're afraid that we'll lose someone's approval, they'll think we're nuts. They'll label us this smearing term called a conspiracy theorist, or they argue with us, and then we're afraid, are we going to lose our argument? We start to self-censor. But I think if we can unapologetically speak our mind while respecting other people and their different points of view, that is a huge contribution to the positive change. I mean, you had mentioned, like, I love that ownership you mentioned of asking, like, where are we corrupt? Like, let's look at that in our own lives. Hell yes. And add to the list, where am I censoring myself? And how can I go above that and honor the truth that the miracle of my being carries, with the humbleness to realize, of course, it's not the absolute truth. It's my truth. And that makes it pretty damn sacred.
I love that. Yeah, definitely earlier this year, I had a lot of censorship happen myself from things that I was sharing, and got myself into different debates with people online every single day. And I found it, God, so frustrating and so exhausting to kind of keep saying, but like, look, this is true. Like, it says it on the government website. Like, it's literally there, it's in plain sight. And as you know, that people just don't want to look at certain things. They just don't want to see it. Yeah. And they'll find any reason to come up for why, you're spreading misinformation. And, even just on Instagram, I can't, there was, that was it. The hashtag, The Great Awakening, has now been hidden or banned on Instagram. So when you look at the hashtag, The Great Awakening, it sends you to the World Health Organization website and asks you if you want information on vaccines.
That I can see how that's obviously very correlated. Of course I want a vaccine information, because I did. That is very unnerving to hear.
Yeah. Oh, and there's another one. Natural immunity. Hashtag natural immunity also sends you to the WHO website. So people are, being stopped from looking for natural immunity solutions, different plants and herbs and vitamins that they can take. So obviously that's not the way to look after your health. Obviously the way to look after your health is to just go to the WHO website and get all your vaccine information.
While hand sanitizing and wearing a mask and protecting yourself from human connection. Obviously, that's all you need to do to be a stellar. It is funny. We can say these things, and obviously we're kidding. Yet when we say them out loud, they're so ridiculous. Neither of us can keep a straight face. Yet, as ridiculous as that is, that's the mainstream narrative. That's what is the least fearful thing to buy into. Because, of course, if you're controlled by fear, the more you're controlled by it, the less fear you actually feel. But when you, use the Matrix analogy, take the red pill, Neo, he lives a very scary reality, waking up. Yet that's also where the empowerment and freedom comes from.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And you recently brought out a video called "If the Mainstream Narrative Was a Conspiracy." I'd love if you can share a little bit more about like where that came from, and if you can share some of the ideas in that video, that would be amazing.
Yeah, so one of the ways the truth as I see it is being discounted by the powers that be. They're using the term conspiracy with everything, and they know what they're doing. They realize the term conspiracy or conspiracy theory. Most people automatically think of some crazy guy talking about the Earth is flat and he's got tinfoil on his head. So they'll take provable, legitimate information that they don't want circulating, and they'll label that a conspiracy. That way, it's very easy for people to discount this provable, true information. And so that was going around and still is. And then I started realizing, like, to me, the most outrageous conspiracy is believing in the mainstream narrative. I mean, to me, that's the conspiracy going on. We're all being lied to. So, I just wanted to, in that video, I flipped the script and I played the character of the wacko conspiracy guy that's obviously crazy and anxious. And he's the one like just repeating all the pieces of the mainstream narrative of what's going on with the pandemic. Like, that's what he believed. But I was portraying it with that agitated conspiracy character type of traits. And it was just my way of sharing, like, what if this mainstream narrative is the real conspiracy theory? So challenging people to flip the script on how we think about that.
Mm. Yeah, it's brilliant, and I recommend everyone to head over to YouTube and definitely keep watching all of the videos that you're continuing to create. I don't know how you're coming up with so many new spins on things, which is great, including the upcoming election, which I think you do a great job of representing the left and the right and poking fun at both without siding or trying deliberately to influence people's decisions on that. So
Yeah.
I know the election's in a couple of weeks, I believe. I'm really grateful to not be American, because I would definitely feel the pressure to vote for. I don't know that you guys have great options at all.
Yeah. we don't have great options, I'll tell you that. But it's very obvious. The social media and most of the mainstream media are manipulating people to vote for the left, to vote for Biden. And, I don't think Biden's a great candidate. I don't think Trump's a great candidate. Some of Biden's policies simply scare me more. Like, he thinks we need more lockdowns and more masks. He's obviously using the mask as a virtue signal campaign tactic. And that one issue alone is like, dude, I'm too scared to vote for Biden. I don't think Trump's a great candidate. So, and by no means am I suggesting how anybody should vote. Yet I don't like the social media powers and mainstream narratives and the people that control those outlets. I don't like them treating citizens as though they're too stupid to make up their own minds and therefore need to be manipulated into who to vote for. And, one of the most recent events, and I just filmed a video about it today. It's going to go out tomorrow, and during this recording. But the video is going to be called something along the lines of "Why Twitter Censored the New York Times post, or the New York Post about Hunter Biden." Long story short, there's really incriminating stuff that came off of Joe Biden's son Hunter's computer that shows Joe Biden was linked to corrupt stuff with Ukraine, with international policies, like pretty illegal stuff. Now, I'm sure there's plenty of corrupt stuff about Trump, yet Twitter censored the New York Post tweets about it, and they froze her account and froze everybody's account who shared that article. And that is just, I mean, it's dramatic infringement on freedom of speech. It's dramatic election interference. And though the first thing that comes up is, what are they trying to hide? And if they're trying to hide something, it makes them look just more evil. I think it's a horrible campaign tactic. I think it is a dangerous precedent. And nonetheless, it's all the social media is very much trying to influence everyone to vote left. And is it right to vote left, vote right? What's right is what a person actually thinks. That's why it's their right to vote, not my right to tell them how to vote. Yet it's very, very just one-sided, and doesn't make me feel good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, a lot of the documentaries that have come out this year, Out of Shadows being one, and a few others that I can't recall their names, we've really been shown how manipulative the media can be, and how these what we're being told on the news is all controlled by the same people. Every single station is owned by the same people. That's been like a huge wake-up call for a lot of people this year. And I think you're right. Like we're being kind of taught that we're not smart enough to think for ourselves, and smart enough to do our own research, and smart enough to view alternative opinions and media sources and do our own digging. It's just like, no, here's the narrative we want you to believe. This is what we say, therefore this is what you should believe. And in terms of the election coming up, I think it's kind of like everyone is very much assuming that Trump will be out and Biden will be in. And if that does mean more lockdowns, more restrictions, even though the numbers are clearly not warranting that, like, what do you think the future holds for us if people don't wake up and start saying no and leading themselves in a new way? Do you see mandatory vaccines? Do you see microchips? Do you see more and more surveillance and control?
Yeah. Well, if people don't wake up, and I'm optimistic, so I think human nature wants to wake up, just like human nature wakes us up from sleep. We don't go to sleep and stay asleep the rest of our lives. So I'm optimistic, but it's a fair question. If we don't wake up, I think if you look at how the Communist Party in China has heavy control and dictatorship over their citizens, we know what it will be like in the US, what it will be like in Australia. And certainly mandatory vaccines, certainly tracking apps, if not microchips. And I sure as hell don't want to have to explain to my son what freedom was.
Yeah.
I want him to be able to experience it. So, I'm and something else I ask people to think about, and it's this: if you think down this, the horrible reality of what if, like, people don't wake up. If you think down that track for a second, like Ghost to Christmas Future shows you that possibility. There you are with your kids or grandkids 20 years from now, and they say, now, what did you do when all the freedoms were being taken away? I know how I'll answer that. And my answer sure as hell won't be, I did nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, I will give my heart and soul, my life if need be. And obviously, hopefully it doesn't come to physicality yet. I would give my life for the cause of freedom. So, but nonetheless, going down that Ghost of Christmas future, we would live in a very unfree world. In the U.S., Australia, and so many nations are following the same path.
Yeah, no, exactly, and we can see that in China. I too am hopeful that we're not. I mean, I do feel, and a lot of people are talking about this now with the election, that there are potentialities of civil war happening in various different places. And I know a lot of people are saying right now we are already in a war. We're in the spiritual war. We're in a war on our humanity and our freedom and our just our consciousness as souls. So I definitely feel there's more chaos in store, but I do have a lot of faith in the human spirit. And even some of the people that are in my life that I know 3 months ago were following all the rules and being super obedient and doing everything by the book and watching the news every night. Even those people now are just like, this is just ridiculous. They're starting to go, no, I'm not doing that, and they're starting to, in their own way, break the rules and really start to question the authorities in a way that I've never seen them do before. So that gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah, it gives me hope too, and also I have a lot of hope for other people because I changed. And, the first probably 2, maybe 3 weeks of the lockdown starting in mid-March, dude, I was afraid. I very much believed like, okay, there's potential for millions of people to die. I very much believed what I was being told.
Yeah.
And so I was very afraid. And there came a time where I wasn't. I changed my perspective. And, I know the old saying of if I can do it, anybody can do it. And that gives me hope that I know everybody has the ability to. And I certainly hope they exercise that ability to see life through their own eyes rather than seeing life as they're told to see it.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
JP, I love asking everyone these same 3 questions on the show. So as the show is Love, Sex and Magic, the first question is, what is something right now that you are loving?
Yeah, wow. Something I'm loving. My wife being pregnant. I'm loving that.
I love that. She makes a great pregnant person.
She does. And, the more pregnant she gets, and right now, what is she? She's about 7.5 months pregnant. So she's very pregnant. But the more pregnant she gets, the sexier she is. The more of this beautiful divine feminine comes out of her. And it's just so beautiful. And watching her do this, I mean, she's said she's gone through ego deaths, but watching her just gracefully navigate the scary things of life as she knew it, some aspects as she knew it, being shed away as she steps more powerfully into this rite of passage called motherhood. It's very inspiring to see. So, and then certainly part of that I love is the fact that I've got a little boy on the way.
Oh, that's so exciting. Congratulations.
Yeah,
I didn't know you'd found out the sex. Oh, I mean, listening to you talk about her and her pregnancy as well just gives me all the feels.
Yeah.
All the feels. I love it. So happy for you guys.
Oh, heck yeah. Thank you for asking.
Yeah. So I guess the next question is, what is one thing that turns you on?
Yeah, one thing that turns me on is being desired. That's probably not earth-shattering. I'm sure it's not unique to me, but when in a romantic sexual way, when my wife Amber, when she desires me and shows me that, it might be through a look, it might be through actions, might be through words, so many ways, but it's such a turn on for me to be desired.
Beautiful. That eros passion.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. And then finally, when was the last time you experienced magic?
I love that. Last time I experienced magic, probably more often than I recognize. Yet the the example that comes to my mind, probably 6 weeks ago, my 16-year-old dog named Zephyr passed away. Now the magical part of that, and it's super sad, shed so many tears, but the magical part of it is we noticed like he was like having trouble breathing, like kind of trying to catch his breath, but not able to catch his breath. So I sat down with him to kind of check in with my little guy, and it just hit me. It's his time. It just really felt like he was asking me to take his earth leash off. It wasn't a doubt in my mind. Like is it just I knew that I knew in just this magical way. So within you know, I mean, we took immediate action. We took him right into the vet, and he was in our arms as they gave him the injection to take his earth leash off. And though that whole thing was super sad, it was magical and it was beautiful to see my little Zephyr free himself from this body that had been breaking down a bit.
So beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh yeah, you're welcome.
Wow, death is the ultimate ceremony. Very magical experience.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Beautiful. Well, I would love to send everyone to come and watch your stuff, buy tickets for your comedy tour if they still can. Where can everyone come and find you and get more JP in their life?
Yeah, all my social media is Awaken with JP. YouTube is the prime spot to find me, Awaken with JP. And for my comedy tour stops, you can check out my website, awakenwithjp.com/events.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. So this has been incredible. I'm so grateful that we managed to schedule this conversation. So thank you so much for your time. We're going to head over now and take 3 more requested questions from the members of our community inside the Goddess Collective. So we'll go do that. And for everyone else, this is JP Sears. Thank you so much.
Such a joy to be on with you, Mel. I appreciate you having me.
Oh, I hope you absolutely loved that episode. I hope it has inspired you to dream bigger and to create that vision for your future. As always, if you want to join us and go deeper, come and join us inside the community. We have an incredible group of women chasing their dreams on this soul mission in life. We have workshops in there, we have workbooks, coaching calls with me, and of course, extra bonus content from all of the podcast guests. So until next time, hit subscribe, share this episode if you loved it, connect with me online, and yeah, I'll see you for another episode next week.